Ladies and gentlemen, the Greater Bay Area has a region of opportunities, is teeming with innovation and collaboration. Mr. Arthur Yuen, Deputy Chief Executive of the Hong Kong Monetary Authority, will now share with us the latest insights and cross-border initiatives for developing a more connected and collaborative fintech ecosystem in the Greater Bay region, and at the same time discuss the role of Hong Kong in this development. To speak about the Fintech Catalyst, a new era of fintech growth in the Greater Bay Area, please welcome Mr. Arthur Yuen.
Good afternoon, everyone. Once again, welcome to FinTech Week 2024. It was great for me to have a chance to talk to you this afternoon to talk about the role of Hong Kong as a catalyst for fintech development in GBA area. I was actually backstage listening to Tom talking about his views of the markets, where things are heading, and it's interesting to hear that he talked about the role of regulation in all this. He being a market person talking about regulation, and now if those of you who know me, I regulate banks, I supervise banks. But they asked me to talk about market development. So it can't be more interesting than this, that you ask a market person to talk about regulation and ask a regulator to talk about market developments. But that's the very nature of fintech developments. You try to bring the two worlds together so that they work in a manner that makes sense. I've been asked to talk about what Hong Kong should be doing in terms of fintech growth in the GBA, in Greater Bay Area. Now, before I talk about that, let me take a step back and pose the questions to you. Why are we adopting fintech solutions within the financial industries? I think from a regulatory perspective, the HMA does think that it's very important for financial firms to fully adopt fintech solutions because of two reasons. First is because that's what your customer is asking you to do, and therefore financial firms need to respond to market demands. But more importantly, we think that there's a second reason that if you adopt fintech solutions properly, that helps financial institutions to better deal with the strategic risk that they would be facing. The very nature of technology development is such that technology firms can actually provide some of the financial intermediation services without going through the traditional route. So if financial firms do not adopt digitalization adequately, there is always a chance of disintermediation, and therefore they need to manage the strategic risk. Now, with that, from a supervisory perspective, we are looking at two things in particular. First is what we call the first order measurement in terms of adoption rates of fintech solutions. So we always measure how quickly financial institutions, in particular, in my case, banks in Hong Kong, are adopting fintech solutions. How much of the investments are actually in the fintech area? But there's also a second level, what we call a second order measurement. Is there any chance that we can compress that adoption rates? Things that can happen in 8 years, can we compress it to 4 years instead? That is what we call a telescoping process. So at the HMA, we try to telescope in what we think the market will look like a few years down the road, like let's say 5 years down the road. We want to telescope that in to see whether we can actually push that into a 3-year time horizon. That is the first view of what we call catalytic view. As a catalyst, we want to ensure that things can happen faster than if they are left on their own. And so that's the timeline view of catalysts. There is actually a second view of catalytic function, is in terms of coverage. So we are also looking at, on top of compressing the timeline, we also want to make sure that there are geographically a wider scope of transformation and adoption of fintech solutions. And from our perspective, the most logical areas that we should look at in terms of overcoming geographical constraint is the GBA area, the Greater Bay Area. And so that's what we call the geographical view of catalysts. Now, for those of you who have been following the Hong Kong scene long enough, you know that the HKMA has adopted the Fintech 2025 strategy, where we have identified 5 areas of strategic fintech developments where we want to really, in a few years' time, develop a thriving ecosystem for those areas. If I apply those 2 views that I was referring to earlier, the timeline catalytic view and the geographical catalytic view, then on the first one, by 2025, we really want a very thriving ecosystem in Hong Kong. Now, we look at some of the history of fintech firms. It normally takes a fintech firm 10 years to globalize their solutions. So PayPal took 10 years, N Group took 9 years. We do think that if you use Hong Kong platform properly, we hope that we would be able to provide a platform for upcoming fintech firm to compress that timeline to hopefully 5 years in globalization. And geographically, Hong Kong is plugged into the GBA area. I spare you the details there. Suffice to say that we do have a large pool of talented professionals. We have a very supportive regulatory environment, and we are very experienced in terms of promoting cross-border collaborations. So that's the what part of the equation, what we really want to do in terms of being a catalyst. The next things that we need to ask ourselves is why we think we are in a position to do all that, to become a very effective catalyst for that to happen. For a start, Hong Kong is already an IFC, and therefore we do think that we provide a very fertile ground for cross-border flow of data, resources, and capital. And because of that, we can also help fintech firms to refine their fintech solutions so that it fits better the needs of not just a local scene, but also a more regional or in even a global setting. And then we have the GBA concept behind all this. And in terms of southbound, we do have a lot of upcoming very good fintech firms in mainland China who is trying to really globalize the fintech solutions. We do think that Hong Kong provides a very solid southbound sort of staging post for them to do that. In terms of northbound, we also think that fintech firms from abroad can use the Hong Kong platform to go into mainland China, and China being one of the 2 largest fintech markets in the world. And in fact, in a survey conducted by Invest Hong Kong, 37% of the surveyed institutions or international businesses actually prefer using Hong Kong as an entry point into the mainland market, in particular into GBA. An example of that is of how do we actually help fintech firms from mainland China to go outside the mainland? WeBank. WeBank is a very well-established mainland digital bank. It has recently set up its technology company headquarters in Hong Kong, looking at how they can make best use of Hong Kong to develop their global footprint. And we are very pleased to have Henry here today, and he would, I'm sure, he's from WeBank, and I'm sure he will be talking about his experience there in using Hong Kong for that purpose in the upcoming panel discussions. So we have answered the what and the why questions, and the third area of questions that we need to do is, or we need to tackle is really the how question. How are we going about doing that? Now, in nature, what a catalyst does is to accelerate changes, accelerate growth, basically by lowering what we call the activation barrier of things happening. That is also what we want to do, is we want to lower the activation barrier or adoption barrier for fintech solutions. So how do we do that? We start off by polling financial firms. What has been stopping you from adopting fintech solutions more liberally and widely? And we found that 3 very commonly cited what we call barriers of adoption or activation barriers. First one is uncertainty about regulatory compliance. Secondly, unavailability of data, in particular where data needs to cross border in a secure manner. And finally, the third barrier is the unawareness of a plethora of fintech solutions that is constantly changing out there. And in order to address these barriers, we have actually done a lot of work at the HKMA. The first one, uncertainty about regulatory compliance. I guess what the firms, financial institutions are saying is that they want to try, but they want to also make sure that if they try out new technologies and they fail, then the regulators would not bring out the sledgehammer and smash their head in. Our answer to that is we won't. We don't normally smash people's face in or heads in. We sometimes do if the thing is really bad. But we don't normally do that. But in order to convince the financial firms that we won't normally be doing that is by introducing the concept of Sandbox. So in different areas, we have sandboxing arrangements when banks and financial and fintech firms can come to us and start launching new technology solutions. And if things should not really progress as they expected, we promise you will not see us. We would not be all over your back. And so the sandboxing idea has been a very useful concept for lowering the activation barrier for financial institutions and tech firms. So in 2022, the Hong Kong Monetary Authority and the People's Bank of China jointly launched a facility called the GBA Fintech Pilot Trial Facilities. That's basically a sandbox concept. In November last year, the Macau Monetary Authority joined in as well, so it becomes a more GBA sort of complete pilot program. And we have actually cases going into that pilot programs for cross-border adoption of fintech solutions. Firms that we talked to who have used that platform, they said that they get earlier supervisory feedback from us. It has expedited the launch of fintech products and ultimately reducing the cost of adoption. More recently and locally, we have introduced a generative AI sandbox concept. Together with the Cyberport, the Hong Kong Monetary Authority launched this sandbox to invite banks to try out generative AI use cases in the sandbox environment. Cyberport will provide the computational capacity for doing that, so banks do not even need to buy the AI capacity or computational capacity themselves. Cyberport will provide that. This facility is now open for application. We are receiving fairly positive interest from banks, and some already indicated that they are going to send in applications. The application process, the first deadline would be mid-November, so we strongly encourage banks to make good use of that. So barrier one is to be overcome by us doing a more user-friendly style type of sandboxing arrangements. Barrier two is about data accessibility. Here, again, we use trials process to try to overcome the concerns about data accessibility, in particular in a cross-border setting in a secure manner. So in May 2024, the Hong Kong Monetary Authority and Shenzhen authorities launched a new facility called the Shenzhen Hong Kong Cross-Boundary Data Validation Platforms. That is a testing platform, or actually it's a trial platform, to provide a credible means to validate the authenticity of documents presented by data owners in both jurisdictions. The first several pilot trials have already been conducted, and it has actually been very positive. Those covered credit reference reports and account opening documents for corporate customers. I strongly encourage banks to make good use of that pilot platform as well. So that's barrier two. We are also overcoming it through introducing more user-friendly pilot platforms. Barrier three is about unawareness of fintech solutions out there. This is all about propagation of information across different stakeholders within the ecosystem. So we have been doing different things at the HKMA. We have been, together with the other financial regulators in Hong Kong, we have introduced a FiniTech series, bringing together fintech solution providers and financial firms so that they actually regularly talk to each other, understand the needs of each other and the services provided by each other. I'm also pleased to announce today that we are launching a concept together with the Shanghai Authority, what we call the Fintech Connect. So a Fintech Connect is a platform for us to put fintech solution providers and financial institutions' needs onto the platform so that we can actually enhance the data flows or information flows, as well as hopefully do a more targeted matchmaking process. So thanks to Shanghai authorities for collaborating with us on this, and we are launching this concept today. On that platform, the Hong Kong Monetary Authority has already included or onboarded fintech solution providers in Shanghai region on the platform, and also financial institutions can now put their needs onto the Fintech Connect platforms so that they can better communicate with each other. This is only the first step of our collaboration with Shanghai authorities. We hope to explore further ways of collaborating with both the Shanghai authorities and other stakeholders in the GBA area. And I would like to thank in particular the officials from Shanghai authorities coming today, in particular Helen Wen, Ms. Helen Wen, who is the Deputy Director of the Shanghai Authority. And thank you very much for joining hands with us and coming to this event today and join the panel to talk about the experience there. I know that I've already used up my time, so let me conclude by saying that the Hong Kong Monetary Authority does attach great importance in terms of making sure that we can leverage upon the catalytic role that Hong Kong can provide in developing a more thriving fintech ecosystem within the region. We do hope that in doing so, we are not just driving innovation or developing the fintech ecosystem in the region, but also to really serve as a launching pad for fintech solutions that have the potential to reshape the regional, if not the global, financial landscape in the longer run. The HKMA will continue to play our part in lowering activation barrier, and if the audience can think of other activation barriers that you think the HKMA should deal with, actively do let me know and my colleagues know. Let us together build and work towards a more vibrant and connected financial and fintech ecosystem. Thank you very much. At this point in time, let me once again thank you to the panel speakers that will come from Shanghai Authority, as well as Henry and also Daniel from HSBC. Let me, at this point, invite maybe Helen and Mr. Yin from the Shanghai Authority to come on stage and join me for a group photo, and Carmen as well, to join me as a group photo. We use this group photo for the social media posts for the Fintech Connect launch.